Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
6:07 now on this Tuesday morning, and a busy one in our news cycle. Thanks for letting us be your sidekick as we shepherd our way through it. Coming up at 7:05, Luis Fernandez. We told you about him. He's a Virginia dad who got kicked out of his local swim club there because he, identified a boy who was competing against girls as a boy competing against the girls. See, you get punished for telling the truth in Northern Virginia if Democrats have their way. 7:35 brings us Nick Minnock, WJLA, on the behind-closed-door Loudoun County School Board meeting yesterday. 8:05 brings us Lee Smith, one of the top investigative journalists on the Russiagate hoax. And then at 8:35, Scott Smith, who knows a thing or two about how Loudoun County School Board operates. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Look at Julie Gunlock. Good God. That's the voice I use for little babies or puppy dogs. Did I ever tell you about the time I was actually on the phone with Mark Levin one time?
Oh,
and
no,
he's talking to me like this, and he's Mark Levin, and he's like, doing this, and he says, Larry, hang on, really angry, and I'm fired up. Hang on, Larry, just a sec. And then he turns to his puppy. Look at you.
No.
Look at you. What did you do? Do you want to go outside? I've never told that
love
story
dog lovers
in public before. But yes, he loves his dogs, Mark Levin does. And he turns into he uses that voice. I love that. Joining us now, also a dog lover, I'm assuming, Hans von Spakovsky. He, of course, Heritage Foundation, former Justice Department official, expert on election integrity and voting rights. Hans, good morning. Thanks for rising and shining with us at 6:08.
Well, thanks for having me on.
All eyes are on the Lone Star State right now as Texas Republicans are going through a redistricting process. And it's so egregious, it's so outrageously racist and gerrymandered that Democrats have fled the state. Before we get into the actions of Democrats leaving and the criminal implications as suggested by the governor of Texas, can you take us back here first on the basis of this redistricting? I'm told that you're only supposed to redistrict at the decades after a census. The fact that they're doing this in the year 25 rather than in a year ending with a zero is unprecedented and unconstitutional. Is that true?
No, that is a complete and total lie. There's nothing that prevents. There's no law in place that says you can't redistrict more than once in a decade. Legislatures just have gotten in the habit of doing that. And the claims that what the Republicans are doing is racist, actually, it's the exact opposite. Here's what generated all of this. Last August 1st, 2024, the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, that's the appeals court that covers Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, overturned and threw out an almost 40-year precedent. And what it was all about was that 40 years ago, the Fifth Circuit mistakenly said that what are called coalition districts are required under the Voting Rights Act. A coalition district is when you combine two different racial minority groups to try to get over 50%. So in other words, if you don't have enough African Americans, you don't have enough Hispanics so that they would constitute, 51% of the vote, therefore be able to elect their candidates of choice, you combine them, like 30% blacks, 30% Hispanics, and together, if they vote together, well, then they can vote. Anyway, they overturned that and said those kind of coalition districts, those are not protected by the Voting Rights Act. And so the Justice Department sent a letter to Texas saying, well, look, you got at least 4 districts. And these are all the elected Democrats. You got 4 districts in which you did that. Yeah. You combined these 2 different racial groups to create these districts. So what was your main factor that you used to draw those boundary lines? Race. And you can't do that. You can't do that.
And, of course, Democrats are crying foul because those also happen to be Democrat districts. That's not the intention here, though. It just so happens that they're Democrat districts, but they've been drawn specifically along racial lines because it was assumed that they would vote a certain way. And the accusation here is that the Republicans are doing this so that they can maximize Republican representation in the House. I don't know if they can prove that necessarily, but Hans, forgive me, I live in Maryland's 3rd congressional district. It looks like a spider having sex with a squashed squid. It is the most ridiculous gerrymandered district. And then Governor Martin O'Malley has admitted under oath that he did it, and they redistricted Maryland because they specifically wanted to maximize Democrat representation. This is a tale as old as time.
It is. In fact, the word gerrymander goes back to colonial times. There is absolutely nothing illegal or unconstitutional about drawing lines to maximize political representation. And that's what the Texans have done. They acted after they got that letter from DOJ saying, look, these four districts are racist gerrymanders. They've drawn up a new plan with 5 new districts that, they're trying to maximize Republican representation, but that's perfectly constitutional. Happens all the time.
So Democrats have fled, and they're grandstanding, and they're doing press conferences, and they're now out of state. By the way, real fast, I know some of them went to California and New York, but a big chunk of them went to Illinois, which is incredibly ironic. Yeah, really ironic.
Right.
And they went on a private jet. And J.B. Pritzker, the governor there, one of the richest men in America, if they took money to leave the state of Texas to specifically not act on legislation that is facing them as duly elected officials, could that be constituted as an illegal bribe? Could that be seen as a felony? Here, I'm going to give you money to leave the state so you don't carry out your duty as an elected official. That seems illegal to me, to take money for that or something of value like a private jet.
Well, in fact, Governor Abbott issued a statement pointing out that under the Texas Penal Code, it's a criminal offense if you intentionally and knowingly accept any benefit as consideration for, guess what, your decision, opinion, recommendations, or vote. So, the governor is threatening to have them criminally prosecuted for not only that, but as you know, the last time Democrats walked out, did the same thing, was in 2021 to avoid the great voter ID and election reform bill that the GOP was pushing. To try to stop that in the future, they changed the rules in the Texas House to impose a $500 a day fine on legislators who abscond. Well, the Democrats apparently have all these liberal groups raising money for them to pay those fines, and the governor is saying, look, that's within that bribery statute.
And meanwhile, New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Newsom are saying that they're going to do the same things in their states, getting all fired up. Actually, the governor of New York, again, Hochul, she hosted the delegation from Texas, the ones that ended up in New York. So what do we think that these two states will do? Will they just do the same thing that we're seeing out of Texas?
Well, the problem with Democrats is that we all know that if they do redistricting, what will be the primary factor they will use to draw those lines? It's not going to be politics. It's going to be race. And if they do that, that's a direct violation of a Supreme Court decision called Reno versus Shaw that said if race is the primary factor when you do redistricting, you are violating the Equal Protection Clause, the one person, one vote standard of the 14th Amendment. So if they do that on a racial basis, then they're going to have a lot of lawsuits filed against them claiming that they acted in a discriminatory manner.
All right, Hans, stay there. We've got a little bit more here that we want to discuss, if you don't mind, one more segment, because there's more on this story out of Texas and also what the broader ramifications are constitutionally with regard to redistricting and the census, because that's a big part of this as well. We continue with Hans in a moment. First, though, at 6:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Continuing with Hans von Spakovsky, yes, we heard Hochul and Newsom all say, we're going to fight fire with fire. We're just going to do the same thing in our states. Two things here. First of all, those states are already pretty gerrymandered. I don't know if they can squeeze out another couple of Democrat districts. I'm sure they could try, but as you point out, Hans, if they do it based on racial criteria, that's going to be thrown out. Also, those states, unlike Texas, those states actually do have built into their constitution or statutes a review of sorts. New York, I know, has a commission. In fact, Kathy Hochul tried to do this last year after the 22 midterms, and I think the commission rejected it because it was so gerrymandered, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. And as I'm sure you know, California also has a supposedly independent redistricting commission that is supposed to do the redistricting. So the governor can't just order them to do that. I mean, the legislature normally is responsible for it, but Texas, they transferred all that power to an independent redistricting commission. Now, that commission hasn't been very independent. It has really favored Democrats, but the governor doesn't have the power to order them to do redistricting in the state.
How much of this is tied to that bad census that was done in 2020, where even the Census Bureau has admitted, yeah, we got it wrong. We undercounted mostly red states. I think there's only one blue state that was undercounted, and overcounted mostly blue states. That needs to be adjusted. That affects the congressional delegation. It also, by the way, will affect not just how these districts are drawn up, but also the number of districts a state is allowed to have, which ultimately will affect the Electoral College as well. Is this tied to that?
Well, that's also good justification for doing redistricting. Texas was one of the states that the Census Bureau itself admitted had severely undercounted the population. But not only that, but look, Texas, I think last year held the record for the biggest increase in population of just about any state. Since the 2020 census, they've added over 2 million residents to the state. That means that the districts that they drew up in 2021 are now all distorted because they don't reflect either the undercount from census or the increased population. So it's just fundamentally a fair thing to try to redraw districts to take into account those population issues.
So how do you think this plays out in Texas and then further in some of these other states now that are looking at it? It doesn't seem like the Democrats have a legal leg to stand on, the ones who have fled the state. Also, by the way, politically, not a great look, is it, to sort of hightail it and run, especially in Texas? That's not a Texas thing to do.
No, in fact, and Governor Abbott has been making fun of them, saying Texans don't run from a fight, which I don't think makes them look very good. The governor has now issued arrest warrants, which he has the power to do. And even if they avoid coming back for this is a special session. It ends in 2 weeks. The governor under the Constitution can call up another special session. Well, these are all part-time legislators. What are they going to do? Stay out of the state for the next year and a half before the November elections? So he may not get them back for this session, but I think they have the ability to wear these people down so that they've got to come back to the state. And when they're back in the state, they can be arrested and hauled into the chamber.
Dude, they got to send Chuck Norris out to do it. Walker, Texas Ranger. Make the arrests.
Hans, I don't know if you've looked into this, but is there any polling on this? How does this play with the average voter? Do they think, they're really being heroes here. They're really standing up for, minorities or voting rights or whatever. Or do people see this for the stunt it is?
No, I think people see it for the stunt because they've done it too many times. This is not the first time. Like I said, the last time they did it was when the state passed, the GOP was passing, voter ID and election reforms, which were overwhelmingly popular with the folks of Texas and didn't have any of the deleterious effects that Democrats kept predicting. They've had great elections since then with all those reforms in place. So I don't think this buys them many votes in the state of Texas.
Let's remind everyone that was when they fled to D.C. and the picture of them all on the plane showed that they had a giant case of light beer with them as they were going. It was a party.
They caught COVID.
And they caught COVID while they were here. That's right. And by the way, those outrageous unconstitutional election reforms, they were demanding that if you send in a mail-in ballot, you have to put in a copy of your ID along with it. That's how outrageous and unconstitutional it was.
Right.
I have noticed quickly, Hans, I have noticed that at all the screams of this is illegal, this is unconstitutional, I don't see any action in the courts. I mean, Democrats are always immediately ready to get in front of a judge and make their case because they can find it. But they're not doing that this time. It almost seems like a concession that, yes, in fact, everything that's being done here is legal and constitutional.
That's because it is.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Hans. Always good to have somebody actually speak reason to a crazy, hyperbolic story like this one as it's being reported elsewhere. Thanks, Hans.
Sure thing. Bye-bye.
It is 6:23.
Well, as you know, the Trump administration has given 5 Northern Virginia school districts until the middle of August to reverse their non-binary bathroom and locker room policies. Well, last night, Loudoun County and Fairfax County held closed-door meetings. Of course, it was closed-door to discuss. We'll have the latest on that. Keep it here. It's 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37 now on a very busy Tuesday morning in your nation's capital. Lots of national, international stories to cover, as well as important stories right in our backyard, which somehow end up being national stories after we dive deep into them. Love that. Coming up at 7:05, a local Virginia father was kicked out of the local swimming pool and swim club because he properly identified a boy who was competing against the girls as a boy competing against the girls. We told you his story yesterday. You'll hear it straight from him. Luis Fernandez at 7:05. 7:35, Nick Minnock of WJLA on the Loudoun County School Board meeting behind closed doors. We're going to get to the details of that in a moment. 8:05, Lee Smith will join us on the Russia hoax and a potential grand jury. And then at 8:35, Scott Smith, who's had a tangle with the Loudoun County School Board himself over the years. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
I know things are bad for you in Alexandria. Do you sometimes... Do you wish that you were in Loudoun sometimes? Just
never.
Well, at least there seems to be some resistance in Loudoun, right?
Well, you're right. Good point. Good point.
Where in Alexandria,
I can't afford a house in Loudoun.
the only flag you can fly in front of your house these days in Alexandria is a white one.
Right. Please
you
leave
surrender.
us alone.
Fine, it's over. When last we checked on Loudoun County, the Department of Education had determined that they were in violation of Title IX, along with 4 other Northern Virginia school districts. And they've already had some communications, according to the Department of Education. They said that they're satisfied that these school districts in Northern Virginia are operating in good faith to try to get compliance with Title IX, which I think is a euphemism for they're trying to figure out a way around it and,
generous.
We're not going to have boys and girls restrooms because that's not really a boy. That's a girl.
Oh, there's,
with a ding-dong.
If they're being generous with the good faith, I really doubt that, but whatever.
Well, they have till August 15th to figure it out. And so this week, 2 of the prominent largest school boards, Fairfax and Loudoun County, they met to discuss how they were going to be in compliance. But for some reason, Julie, they met behind closed doors.
Odd that, right? Odd.
They didn't want the public to hear or even to observe. I mean, forget about participating and actually having their opinion heard.
That's out of the question, right.
but they weren't allowed to actually observe how the school board discussed and debated how to come into compliance with federal law.
Right, and I just, it's really important to say these are the same, I think it was 7, actually, school districts in Northern Virginia that sued the state of Virginia when they wanted to lift when the governor wanted to lift the mask mandates. You know, this is the same kind of, and they had a lot of closed-door meetings about that. They met with a lot of lawyers. You know, parents were not in any way involved in the decision-making process. This is literally a rehash of that. They're going to have a lot of meetings. They're going to meet with lawyers. They're going to see how they can get out of this, how they can continue to harm kids. That's the goal here.
It's incredibly typical, though. You're right. The 5 in question, by the way, Alexandria City, Arlington, Prince William County, Fairfax County, and Loudoun County, all in violation of Title IX because they are allowing transgender, non-binary bathroom and locker room policies that allow students the option to use bathrooms and locker rooms based on their perceived identity rather than their actual biological reality. This, of course, not only puts girls in a vulnerable position from boys, but as we've seen play out in Loudoun County, there are boys who expressed their discomfort with a girl being in the locker room with them. And everybody focuses on what a traumatic experience for girls to go through puberty and have all these body image issues. And I get that. You're right. It ain't so easy for boys either. And I assure you, when I was 14, I would not want a girl in the locker room while I'm, getting ready for physical education and what have you.
Well, what also bothers me so much is that there was, an actual sexual assault in a bathroom in Loudoun County. When I know we're going to talk to Scott Smith, the father of that child.
Yeah, his daughter was the victim.
And there's no sympathy for that. In Alexandria, Virginia, we actually reported on this at IWF. There was an alleged sexual assault in a bathroom in Alexandria City, which was covered up by city officials. They wouldn't tell parents about this. There actually have been crimes in these bathrooms. And in Loudoun County, it was due to a transgender identified skirt-wearing boy going into that bathroom where a faculty member then walked in and walked out. Because why wouldn't she? It was allowed, according to their. She thought there was something going on in here, but I'm going to walk out and not cause a stir. I mean, we actually have evidence of kids getting hurt because of these programs, and they persist. Yeah. They persist.
You know who else persists? Nick Minnock, the local WJLA reporter. He was not allowed in the meeting, of course. It was behind closed doors in Loudoun County. But afterwards, he chased down some of the school board members in the parking lot. Here's great. Cut 7.
Both sides are wondering what school board members are going to do and where they stand. So after the meeting, I asked 4 of the school board members what they're going to do.
Do you personally support having biological males in women's locker rooms or bathrooms? Do you support Policy 8040?
Mr. Minnock, I cannot comment right now.
Why not?
I'm so sorry. Not at this moment. I'm in a rush, too.
Do you personally support allowing biological males in female locker rooms and bathrooms?
I will not give you an answer.
Where do you stand? Do you oppose allowing biological males in women's spaces, locker rooms, and bathrooms? Do you oppose that?
Gee, you weren't at church yesterday morning when I said absolutely not. They should not be in there.
Miss Donahue, good morning. Do you personally support biological males in female spaces, Miss Donahue? Yeah. You and I have chatted about this before. I'm just trying to give you an opportunity to explain to folks where you stand.
Donahue said she had nothing to add beyond what the school board has already said, which hasn't been much.
Nick Minnock will join us at 7:35. But, these people, they spend a lot of money to become elected officials. They want to be on that school board. They love it because they want to advance policies. They love it for their ego, for their prestige. They love going to football games at the high school and being a school board member and celebrate it. But then when it comes time to answer questions about a basic policy where they've already been found to be in violation of federal law, no comment. I'm not going to talk to you. I don't want to say a damn thing about it.
Absolutely. Amazing. And I mean, these school board, let me reach back, way back, but school boards used to be there. They were supposed to be over the superintendent. They were supposed to be the advocates for parents with school policy. And they won't even talk to parents now. They won't even say anything. And also, just be honest, we know exactly where you land on this. Just defend it. Defend it.
By the way, Republican nominee for governor Winsome Sears, our current lieutenant governor, she told Nick Minnock that she absolutely opposes these policies, and she slammed these school districts for having them in the first place and for meeting behind closed doors. And Abigail Spanberger, of course, exact opposite on that issue. We'll also speak at 8:35 to Scott Smith, who, as Julie just mentioned, his daughter was the victim of a sexual assault because of these policies. That's all coming up later this morning. Right now it's 6:44.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Meanwhile, our sights should be set on some other institutions that continue to violate federal law with regard to these gender policies. Now, the YMCA is not a school necessarily, but they continue to violate Title IX provisions that are set up through the Department of Education and the Department of Justice to determine that boys should be boys and girls should be girls. YMCA is a private organization, but as our friends at Heritage point out, they are getting a ton of federal money. Listen to this.
When I was 17, I was showering in a YMCA women's locker room, and I saw the backside of a naked man just 15 feet away. After employees confirmed that the man claimed to be transgender, I looked into their official policy, which allows biological men to use women's restrooms. The YMCA does the bare minimum to protect the privacy of women and children. They prevent registered sex offenders from using facilities. The YMCA in California even lets male campers sleep in girls' cabins without informing parents to protect the feelings of these teenage boys. The YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association. They offer swimming and gymnastics lessons for little kids and childcare for working parents. This organization has always claimed to be the family gym, but they've compromised their morals.
Yeah, that's true. And we've tracked it over the years. We've told you stories about women who have had to be confronted by men in their locker rooms. They get about $600 million in federal government funding, Julie. And it seems to me that the YMCA is ripe for some attention with regard to some pretty heavy strings attached to that funding.
Yeah, this is another case of one of America's sort of much-loved institutions being captured by the left. And we see this in medical institutions. We see this universities. I mean, nearly every major institution in America has been captured by the left. They are sort of infiltrated by radical leftists, and then their policies are changed. And YMCA is simply not a safe place for women. It is not a safe place for children. And they are going to lose that federal funding. They should lose that federal funding because this is a violation of not only, again, if they're promising, if they're saying this is a good place to come to swim and change your clothes and have your child taken care of, they should be honest with people about this. And they're not. And I think a lot of women are surprised to learn this by actually having to change next to a man in the locker room or in a bathroom. So it is, it's really unfortunate. And again, like we've said this all the time, the left ruins everything. They infiltrate these wonderful organizations, change them for the worse, make them dangerous.
You're so right about that. Yeah. That is such an important point. The guy Iowa Hawk on Twitter, on X, who's a great satirist and observes things. He has a phrase every time a story like this comes up. Like recently there was a story about the world's first lesbian bishop in the Episcopal Church, right? And he points it out just like this, men dressing up as women at the Young Men's Christian Association, YMCA. He says, identify a respected institution, kill it, gut it, and then wear its carcass as a skin suit while demanding respect.
Perfectly.
That's what they do. And I would be wise, I think, for the federal government to examine the YMCA's use of that $600 million in funding. They can keep up their policies, but don't demand that we pay for them. Right. It is 6:54.